Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Inner Estate with your host, Bridget Stuart. My guest today is Andy Madrid, an incredible agent that is really living a fearless life by choice in Big Island, Hawaii. Andy, thank you for being my guest today.
Thanks. Aloha, Bridget.
So, one of the things you and I have had great conversations already about what you've accomplished in your real estate career. And that involves, I don't want to give too much away too soon, but you've literally picked up your real estate business multiple times and moved states, and you're still remarkably successful. So I just know a lot of real estate agents, they feel like once they make roots and start a business in real estate in one place, they think they have an anchor on them, attaching them to that place forever. And you are living proof that that is not true. Could you share with everyone a little bit about how you have picked up and moved your real estate business and continued to have success over the years?
Sure. I started in Oregon. I don't know. I think about some either podcasts I've heard or comments I've heard from others, or maybe I listened to a biography of somebody. And some of the most successful people seem to have, the reason they became successful, I think the perception, the reason some people became successful is because they they kind of hit rock bottom, you know, and they had nowhere to go. I mean,
Right.
we've either listened to or met an agent. I listened to one a year ago. She came to speak up in Waikoloa, and the agent was saying, I had no money in my pocket. I had a kid. My husband had divorced me. And I pretty much was hauling my kid around everywhere. And she became really successful. And it's almost like I think to myself that maybe we as individuals, we can't how do we achieve that level of success until we feel like it is to barely get by or feel like we're about to lose the roof over our heads or lose the car we're
Right.
driving or something like that? I became a real estate agent. I lost my job. I was working for a software company for 21 years. We went through an acquisition. My whole department got cut. I was the first of the department to go, and then shortly after, all of it. And I didn't know what to do. I had never been fired from a job. I just sort of was reeling from it. And I don't know, I was in a fog for months. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was drawing some unemployment. I was gotten a severance from the company. We knew we had to sell our house because the clock was ticking. And I met with a couple of agents. The second one was like, you should be doing this. I'm like, I hadn't really thought about it. But
Right.
anyway, that's what I did. You know, I ended up becoming an agent, a broker, because it was a broker only state in Oregon. My first deal was my own house,
Mhm.
representing myself as the seller on the property. My partner and I are the seller. We sold that property, and I did really well. And I it was fun. I was in this. I was with a big brand, and then the agent I was had teamed up with. There was a few of us, and she left to start her own brokerage. And when she left, we all said, "Oh, yeah, we'll go with you." And she'd offer us an incredibly generous split. And I really thought, well, I wonder how that's going to work. And in the end, we all realized that. And she realized she says, I can't give you 90%. I said, I
Right.
know. There's no way to keep the lights on in the building. There's
Right.
no way to
Yeah.
make any money. It was okay, but I still was getting 80%. A little boutique place. We'd have soup Wednesdays because it was in Oregon. We get cold. And so we would take turns on Wednesdays. We'd make some kind of soup. And I love to make roasted butternut squash soup.
Hmm.
And the office was sort of like this loft space. We could go upstairs and look down on the entire space down below, see people coming in, and the office was on a corner of this main street, and the walls were glass, and the walls would fold away. It was really kind of neat. So, but in the winter, we didn't have this open. But yeah, we'd sit up there and we'd have soup on Wednesdays. It was really fun.
Hmm.
And I was one of the only men. I think I was the only man in the office because all the other agents were women. They all had kids. So it was always soccer and football and this and that and the other after school thing. So I was the one, we did floor time. Man, I did floor time like 28 days out of every month. And I had walk ins every single day, solid walk ins.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I did a pretty good business, but I'd sold all of my friends' homes. We're like, okay, now everybody we knew has moved away.
Hmm.
They all went back to California because the economy had allowed them to do that. And then I was like, well, what are we going to do? We went to visit some friends of ours. We came back and we're like, what are we still doing here? We were both from Southern California, so we decided we're going to move back. We did. We ended up selling the house. We had a garage sale, made a boatload of money at the garage, like $11,000 in 2 days at a garage sale. It was
Are you
insane.
kidding?
11,000. I did it twice in Oregon. Both times,
Wow.
$10,000 in a 2 day garage sale. It's crazy. I had somebody come into the garage and they're like, "Oh, there's lots of good stuff." And I had offhandedly made the comment, "I need someone to just buy everything wall to wall." They made an offer right there. I told the 15 people in the garage, "Get out. Garage
Get
sale's over."
out, put everything down in your hands, and get
Exactly.
out right now, unceremoniously. Yeah.
So we go back to California. I ended up working to get my license. I was actually trying to get my license before we moved. And then when I moved, I sat for the exam and got my license and went to work for Coldwell Banker and with the agent that has sold our house in California. And that was a lot of fun. I did pretty well. It was a little tough. It's very competitive, going from a
Yes.
smaller town with mostly agents. And I think you have it in every market. You'll have agents that are older and retired. They're drawing a pension. They're living on their pension plus their husband's retirement. So for them, doing real estate is sort of a
A
hobby.
hobby.
Then you have
That's
others
right.
that we're doing it full time. If we
That's
don't
right.
sell, we don't eat.
Yes.
That's what I was doing. So, I was doing that in Oregon, come back to California, and I sit down with the broker at the office, and he wants to know, like, about me. How long have I been doing real estate? My experience, what kind of transactions, and how many you do? And I'm like, I don't know, 19 or 20 a year. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I said, because, come the end of, October, the whole world freezes up in Oregon. I'll just pack it in and not do anything. I mean, literally, you're not going to sell anything from like October to March. I mean, you really have to hustle and find somebody that really wants to buy because it's a frozen wasteland. Everything looks terrible. The plants are all
Right. Right.
the first spring, everybody comes out to plant. But during the winter, it's just this ghost town. And so in Santa Barbara, the typical agent might do 5 transactions, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
This past year, talked to agents in Santa Barbara that hadn't sold a single dime all
Mhm.
year long. And if I don't have 5 or 6 things in escrow at every single month, I'm getting nervous. And these
Right.
people hadn't sold anything. I talked to this girl. I had 2 closings this year. Both were referrals. That's odd. That's how she got paid. And it really kind of, you know, I like not having that. I don't like
Yes.
there were just in the county I was at, there were 5,000 members of the MLS. And not including that was Ventura County. Then you had Santa Barbara County and you have North County and these things. So it kind of got, it was a little kind of crazy. But I did okay there. There were some high months, there were some low months, like most of the agents were there. And then in 2018, my partner's mom got cancer. He went and visited her and her prognosis wasn't good. They gave her like 6 months, and literally it was like barely 6 months, and she had passed away. And he decided, he said, I want to move. I'm like, oh, please don't say Oregon. Please don't say Oregon, because that's where his family lived, and I didn't want to go
Okay,
back.
that's what I was gonna ask, is where did his mother live?
Well, they grew up in Southern California where we were living, but they had moved to
Right.
Oregon many years
To
earlier. So
Oregon. Okay.
his mother and his brother up there, and we've been up there, and it's pretty. We'd lived up
I
there
can
for.
just see you right now being a supportive partner and then being like,
I know.
"Please
Please don't
don't
say
say
Oregon. Please.
Oregon, please."
Yeah. So where do you want to go? I said, "Where do you want to go?" He says, "I want to go to Hawaii." And we had talked about it before because one of the places when you're younger, you go to Hawaii on vacation. Everybody goes to Waikiki because that's where you go. And everybody says, I want to move here because, those so you go back to the mainland, the trappings of vacation all fall away, and then you go back to work and then you forget about it.
Right.
And of
Right.
course, I forgot about it for 30 more years. And I said, okay. But it took us almost a year to get here. We came to visit right after the Kilauea eruption that wiped out 700 homes in the lower
Yes.
half of Leilani Estates. We stayed in a little neighborhood an hour south of Kona we had driven through and thought it was really pretty, but when you're driving through and thinking it's pretty, it's a whole lot different than when you walk through it and like, yikes, because we live in a neighborhood. I was used to living in gated community, white picket fences, everybody keeping up with the Joneses, and now I'm out here in the bush.
Right, because it's on Big Island, in case anyone doesn't know,
It's
right? So
very,
it's
very
Big
rural.
Island.
Right.
Yes, which
Very
is
rural.
very different than, say, Honolulu or,
Honolulu or Maui. People
yeah,
so
it's
I'd
very
rather go to
different.
Maui. Well, yeah. So
Which,
we
by the way, it is my favorite island. I was
what's
gonna
that?
say don't tell anyone, but of course, now I just let everyone know.
When we
I
were
love Big
looking
Island.
when you spend time doing things here, reminding you of why you came here, because everybody can come here and you get a job. Like, we watched Hawaii Life, the real estate company, they had a show, Hawaii Life, people
Right, that's right.
moving to the Hawaiian Islands. And they're like most of those TV shows that are real estate related, it's all canned, it's all set up. The transaction's already taken place, but they're gonna reenact the whole
Correct.
thing.
Right.
So we watched that show because we were wanting to see what people were doing, where they were going, and particularly if they were coming to the Big Island on a modest budget, we were interested in seeing where they were gonna go because that was gonna be us.
Mhm.
We thought about Maui. We could have moved to Maui. We would have not been able to keep our house in California. We would have lived in one of the not as nice communities because we wanted to live on a we needed to and wanted to live on a very tight budget.
Right.
You know, I think about, oh, if I knew then what I knew now, maybe I would just bit the bullet because Maui is just, you know, the real estate sales in Maui are great.
Right.
But, we looked at Lanai. I'd been there a few times for work, and we considered Kauai, but our favorite part of the island would get wiped out. I think I can count a half a dozen times it's seen significant disaster.
Right.
So we thought, okay, the Big Island is diverse, it's large, price points are all over the board. Let's go here. You know, we'd visited, I think the last time that I'd visited before we moved here was almost 30 years ago. So we come here to visit for 8 days, staying 4 days on the west side and 4 days on the east side, make an offer on a property 3 times, and we don't get it 3 times. And we were all over the board on price. We came in at full price, asking for owner financing, which was kind of a new thing for me. We came in under, doing our own financing. We came back to the table full price, getting our own financing. We just couldn't make a deal work. Today, that property never is still sold. They made it a rental.
Wow, okay.
So we had seen this house that we live in now. We walked through it a couple of times. It was a bank foreclosure at auction. Bargain, 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 place and price. It was so cheap we had to buy it.
Right, yes.
And I didn't know what I was
You
going to do.
couldn't say no.
Yeah, I couldn't say no. I thought about getting my real estate license, but I really thought I'd just go back to work to something different. But the agent that we used to buy the property, she's like, "Well, why don't you get your license?" And I'm like, "'Cause I don't know anything about Hawaii." She goes, "Well, we don't either. We were from Orange County." I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
So I did. I got my license here, which quite frankly was out of the 3 states I've sat for exams, Hawaii was the hardest because you have to learn so much about real estate handled under the kingdom versus under, you know, I'll say more contemporary real estate law. So
Right.
it's, you know, to learn all of that stuff that quite frankly, a lot of people will never ever use. You'll come across it every now and then, but I'm not selling property in the Department of Hawaiian Homelands area. So, you know, you typically don't
You
deal with
really
it
don't
like
use it.
right.
Yeah.
So I get my license. I go to work for this small company. It's a small mom and pop shop. There's, you know, three, four, five agents. And then the owner, husband and wife. It was kind of fun. You know, I liked it, but I was in a transaction. I was selling a property in Kona, and the agent on the other side came from KW. And it got kind of contentious in there because I just handled everything the same way I'd handle it in California, which is more of a give and take. It's a little bit more, there's a lot more paperwork and rules in a real estate transaction in California.
Yes.
Buyer and
That
seller,
is where I have my license,
yeah,
so yes, I do
there's
know
more of
that.
a give and take, I think. If a seller needs something, what are you gonna give the buyer? If the buyer wants something, what are you gonna give the seller? In Hawaii, real estate transactions are very buyer centric. The contracts are written very buyer heavy. There's very little a seller can do once you're in contract, short of the buyer being in default. The seller can't really do anything, you know, risk of being sued, which is one thing I hope to change on my list of things to work on. But I'm in
Mhm.
this transaction and the buyer's agent, the buyer wants more time. They changed lenders midstream, and the lender had a requirement with which they originally waived in the offer. And I said, okay. They said, we need 30 days. I'm like, okay. we want $30,000. And the guy looked at me cross-eyed and he called the broker. Who's this Andy Madrid? Does he know what he's doing? He's like, oh yeah, he's sold before. He's very, very familiar. He can't do that. He goes, yes, he can. You could ask
Yeah, you
him.
can.
We had a backup offer that was $30,000 higher. So I said, we'll give you a copy of the backup offer. You want to stay in the deal? It's 30 grand. They did it. They stayed in and we closed. Then he called me up a day or two later. He wanted me to leave and go to Keller Williams. I mean, the short answer was, you ever thought about leaving? Thought there were options, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, click. No, it was like the worst transaction I ever dealt with. It was I'd never really, to that extent, I'd never had agents call my broker to complain about me.
Right, right.
Yeah, it was different. So he made 3 calls. I shot him down 3 times. Then one of the owners of the franchise called me. This guy, Dan, called me. And I told Dan no. And then I met with him. And the second time, I'm going to send you some videos of a couple of things that we're showcasing Keller Williams agents and also showcasing clients of Keller Williams agents and how they had leveraged their technology and stuff. And for the time, it was pretty profound for me. The
Yes.
first agent they showcased was an agent I'd been on the other side of a transaction with in Santa Barbara. And I'm like, I know this guy, I know how he works. And I watched both videos and I called Dan up and said, okay, I'll come over. That's what I did. And I saw a lot of growth then. I had opportunities there. I left a small company because they liked being small, but I was younger. I wanted to grow my business. I wanted
Right.
to have a legacy that I could fall back on. I wanted to have some kind of retirement or something. So anyway, so that's that. So now I had gone from Oregon to California and now gone to Hawaii, having to start the whole thing over. And it takes a lot to ramp up, and you get I mean, it can be a combination of luck and it be a combination of perseverance. I met a guy that had a question about a listing I had, and I sold it to him. So I ended up double ending the deal. And he was so happy with it. Him and his family bought 12 more properties from me. And
Well,
then they
it's
referred other
funny you
people.
mentioned that about, part luck, part determination. What I would think about with luck is the people that get lucky are the people that put themselves out there and make an effort and get into places where they can get lucky.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
agree. It's not
so to
always
me,
just, it's
it's
not just wake up in the
also
morning
part
and
of
getting something fall
choice.
on your lap.
Yeah. You can't like sit in the corner of a room and hope that you get lucky and just have deals fall from the sky.
Right,
So
right,
you were lucky, but you were also skilled because you developed sales skills in Oregon and California, brought them to Hawaii,
right.
and you put yourself out there to the point where you were meeting people so you could get lucky.
Right. And
Yeah.
I had the opportunity with my previous licenses, like in Oregon, having, I sold ranches and
Right.
land and sold on septic and other systems, whereas
Mhm.
you come to here, and even in California, if I calls up somebody and I need creative financing, I'm looking for somebody that will do soft or hard money lending. It was like deer in the headlights. Nobody knew, it's like, how can you not know? You've been selling out here for a dozen years. How could you not know at least 3 or 4 people? I know
Right.
people,
Right. Yeah.
so that or understanding land. I do a lot of land now. And a lot of that's because where I'm at, being south of Kona in the rural area, I move a lot. And the price points are lower. That's always say, like, I don't go to a lot of these events. Like I haven't done like KW did a lot of the events, and people say, are you going to go to this? And I'm like, no, it would either fall at the time of the year that I'm really busy, or I'm like, I work too hard for my money right now.
Right. Right.
I'm not out there slinging, these big estates in, Mauna Lani and Waikoloa. I'm out here slinging dirt, you know,
Mhm.
it's fine. I think that a lot of agents will say, I don't say most agents, I'll say most agents I've met, probably every single one I've met, will say that working with buyers to help them get their first piece of property or their first income property or their first house is much more rewarding than working with a seller. It's just different because you see the buyer's eyes light up. Now,
Right.
I think obviously most agents will say you got to work the sellers because that's where you get listings. You don't have to be dragging somebody around to show property. They would say list to last. You want to
That's
list
right. Yep.
this tree, you got to control the
Right.
market. You got to do listings, and so People ask me, well, how do you become listing? And I don't know how I end up morphing because I mean, I'm a listing agent by primary. I help buyers all the time, but if I look at the listings, I look at my listings, I'm selling 40% or more of my listings. I'm just doing so many more than I have buyers. If I look at the deals that I did in because I just got a report for 2024, 2025, and I look at number of properties that were listings versus buyers. Yeah,
Buyers.
it's mostly listings. So, but I think this is the first job. I mean, I've had a bunch, over the years, outside of deep real estate. This is the first time I've really, I think that, I don't know. I think most agents will say they love what they do. I hope they do. I mean, I hope that's what they say. Because, I mean, if you don't love what you do, why are you doing this? This is not an easy job. People think
Oh, it's not easy.
it's not easy at all.
It's not. And it is not as it appears on TV, as you mentioned. One thing I picked up on is think about how many times as you were sharing that with us, how many times you said it was really fun. And that's something I would say, real estate's really fun. I mean, I'm in my 27th year. It's still fun. I mean, and it's not easy, and it is not as it appears on television, but when you really get in it and you're learning based and you're relationship based and you allow yourself to weather the storms and enjoy the bounty, it's actually very fun.
This year, I moved over to Real Broker. I'd been at KW for 3 years or so. I changed brokerages, and it's different, it being not an office-based brokerage. And the reasons, I said, oh, I came over to KW because it's technology, and I moved over to Real because of the technology. Some of the stuff
Right.
that was it was sort of mind blown when some of the stuff I would see that was available. And then going to the RealX conference, remotely, you know, I've been to Zoom conferences before and I'm like, where's my cup of coffee? I can barely stay awake.
Right.
With the RealX conference, like my arm is getting tired because I'm writing so much
Writing
stuff
so much, yeah.
because there was so many, I'm seeing screenshotting the heck out of my computer because there was so much stuff that was being said. And I wanted to go back and remember that, even if it was just a statement. I'm like, oh, yeah, he said this, he said that. And that was
Right.
just really, really inspiring. And when I talk to agents, people have called me up and asked me about my move. I said, start talking a mile a minute. I can't shut up because I get so excited about doing it. And I said, I'm never going to ask you to change where you're at. You have to decide for yourself. It's like trying to help someone tell them to stop drinking. You're not
Yeah,
they're gonna
you
do
right,
this
yeah, you
on their
can't
own.
tell them that.
So, the agent said, "No, I get that." Because, but the way you talk about it, I can just see your enthusiasm for it. And that agent, they'll be joining. I know they will because there are frustrations about where they're at and they see how they can be solved by changing it. So that's been a lot of fun and it's helped re-energize me. Not every day you wake up, feeling great. You're like, oh yeah, I got to do this. Like this afternoon, I've got to go to the south end of the out end of the volcano for an inspection. And they reached out to me yesterday. Can we do this inspection? I'm like, if you had called me, you would have got my voicemail. Says I don't answer the phone on Sundays, but we're down to the wire, and I got to make it work.
Right, right,
And sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to make it work.
right. And even sometimes those things that come up last minute, even if we first have a feeling of sometimes those turn out to be some of the fun. You
They
never
do.
know,
I see
but
this
it
one
it does
coming together.
happen.
Yeah, this one's going to come together, and it was interesting. So I'm representing both the buyer and the seller. When I initially took the listing, the seller says, "I don't want a dual agency." She signed on a listing agreement. I don't want dual agency,
Right.
and I was fine. That's fine. I'll refer it out. The problem is she realized that it took a savvy agent to help their client see the value, and not everybody could do that. An agent, it was a house that wasn't completed. It was in mid-construction. The seller became disabled and was going to sell it on a hardship. So most agents wouldn't navigate that. They would say, well, let me just take you and show you this one's already done. Your
Yes.
financing already set. You got four walls. You got all your stuff.
Mhm.
You can just and it's really easy and they're gonna get paid. And they would steer the clients towards that. So she ended up changing the listing agreement. we amended it so that I could represent both sides. And this is the deal that's gonna come together is I have both the buyer and the seller because I was able to communicate with both of them. I'm like,
Yes.
"Here, this is what the seller needs to make it work. This is what the buyer wants in order for you to help make it work. How do we make it?" Whereas a lot of times you wouldn't have that, you know? I find it, um, more often than not in a real estate transaction, which is kind of a bummer, is that they can become very adversarial with the buyer, with the agent.
Yes. Or in many things, insulted,
Yeah.
offended, like
They're like,
they
"We
can
don't
get
want
in
them to
their
talk
own
to each other."
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can
They
really
don't
get in their own way. Sellers can sabotage them, and buyers too.
and
If
it's
they write an offer
usually
and they don't like the counter, they can get like, and it's not emotional, it's business.
I think, it may not be good to say, but I think most of the problems stem from the agent.
Yes.
I think it's
Expectations set.
rarely I think it's rarely the buyer. When we bought our house in Oregon, we sat around the table with the buyer. Used the same agent that the sellers were using. And we sat around the table and just talked about how we could it was late at night because we didn't think anybody was gonna be there. We're just sort of driving down this little road, and we see a sign, and I'm gonna call it's gotta be 10 o'clock at night, I think, when we're driving on this road. It's pitch black, no streetlights or anything out in the country. And I'm gonna call the number, and I'll leave a message, have the agent call us tomorrow. I call the number, the fricking agent answers the phone, and, "Well, I'll be there in 10 minutes." We did that. So here it is, 11 o'clock at night, and we're hammering out the offer around this table with a little light outside. It was half dark, talking
Mhm.
about the deal. How are we gonna make the deal come together? That's how we did it. But a lot of times the agents I just watched this show on Netflix called No Good Deeds. Have you seen it? It's got
No, I
Glenn
have not.
Close and Alfred Molina on it. Anyway, this husband and wife are selling a home in like Los Feliz, California, somewhere like that, somewhere in that area, high
Right.
end. But the agent in there makes a comment that, well, the buyer and the seller aren't supposed to be talking to each other.
Mhm.
And it was funny because it's so true that that's the way that people set up. And a lot of times they can really, if there is some contention, there's some animosity going on. Usually when they talk, it diffuses right away. And you find out the animosity was really between the agents, or maybe an agent made a comment to the seller or the buyer, and it set them off.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
and like you said, sometimes it's really about the expectations setting with agents setting expectations with their clients. If they
oh
don't
yeah.
do a really strong job of that, that can lead to a lot of friction too.
Well, that or you you can most agents will be friends with their clients. I mean, it's just part of it's a hazard of the job, I guess, is
Right.
becoming friends with your clients. Sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes it can be really, really, really frustrating. And you have to find a place when you can sort of let all that frustration, anger go. And they'll usually be friends. Like I had one that just closed today. It became kind of terrible at the middle of last week. And the agent was get the my client was getting kind of frustrated with me. Excuse me. I said, "You can't take it personally. You can't let it get emotional. It's not emotional. It's business. It's principle." I said, Business is one thing. When you're standing on principle, it's also emotional."
Yeah.
And once the documents were signed, he called me and he goes, "You know what? I'm sorry for being an ass."
That's right.
This he goes, "I know it was this." I'm like, I totally get it. My job is to help find a solution, And the solution might be you're messing up and you need to get out of your way. But like I was saying, when I moved over to Real, I talked to the broker on the phone. We have
Mhm.
these BICs out here, these brokers in charge, and they're responsible for a handful of agents and other brokers that are doing business. I said, what's your expectations? Just what do you want out of your agents? She said two things. She says, be ethical and have
Mhm.
fun. That was it. That was her only
There you
rule.
go.
Those are easy.
Well, she was speaking your language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't, you had I don't think about whether or not the deal is going to close. I don't think about how much money is on the line in terms of my commission. I figure if I focus on making sure that the client is happy or the client is satisfied or the client reached their goal, then all of it's gravy. Maybe that's a
Right.
naive get it, but you know, that not naive way of looking, I look at the bottom line of how much money, I've made year over year. even when I see people posting on Reddit, somebody made the comment, they posted, "What are you guys doing? Because the market is so slow. What's your side gig?" I'm like, "Side gig?
Side gig.
Oh, I don't have a side, this is it. This is full time. If the market is slow, then speed it up.
That's
You
right. That's right.
make your own. You gotta find the ways. You gotta find that business. There's always business to be had. It's like I
That's exactly right. There are always people buying and selling real estate.
I
Always.
tell people, what's it? People's like people will post, I've tried this, you name it, lead generation company that's taken me for how many millions, how many hundreds or thousands of dollars a month. And they're like, it's not working. I'm like, don't do it. It's like a waste of money. Do open houses. Well, open houses don't work. Says who? Yeah, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
how many deals I've gotten. I mean, the person coming into the house probably isn't going to buy it, but they know somebody who will.
Right.
They might
And
come
they
in
might buy
because they're
something
going to sell
else.
it. Yeah. And they might say, we're thinking about selling. I held an open house for somebody in a condo complex I thought I wanted to live in until I got inside and realized they were packed like sardines in there and I didn't
Uh-huh.
want to. But a couple came through and they're like, would you list our condo for sale? And theirs was a better location. I'm like, absolutely, I will.
Yeah.
They were just wandering around. So open houses work. They may not work on a Sunday. They may not work on a Saturday. Do them on a Wednesday after work.
Yeah. And they're not going to work every time and they're going to work
No,
sometimes. Yeah.
no.
It's,
But yeah, you
you
gotta
bring
go
up a
find
great
your
point.
business.
And as a coach, I get asked similar types of questions. It really boils down to if you want to sell more houses, talk to more people, meet more people. That right? And there is no silver bullet of I'm going to pay this company 5 grand a month and they're going to give me a ton of business. If that was the case, everyone would do it. It is within you. And
Sometimes it can be exhausting to talk to a lot of people. It can be,
yes.
sometimes you just like, I don't want to talk, but I may, I still, even doing this for 15 years, I still have a hard time putting myself out to people sometimes. I could be in a group, one on one, it can be hard. One thing I tell people to do is wear your name tag. If you don't have a name tag, get it.
Yes.
Wear
Yeah.
it everywhere. Or wear a t-shirt that has whatever you have on it, which is something I need to do this week. I have to
Uh-huh.
go out and go, don't order it. Go down to Office Depot, get yourself an iron-on transfer, stick it in your printer and print it out. And that's what I did, when they would do the Red Day stuff. Now I'm
Right,
gonna do
right.
real is doing here. Because people will say, oh, you sell real estate? Uh-huh. Here, see my name tag, you know,
Yeah.
and how's the market? It's great. It's like it's always is. I had the guy that I closed escrow today goes, what do you think the market's going to do? You think it's very good right now? I'm like, I think that it's great for somebody. He wants to know because I got two more deals listed behind him. I closed
Right.
this one today. I've got another, 172.6 million dollars of business to bring on the market now for him.
Right.
And so you're right. You always have to, if you don't feel like you can put yourself out there to people, put something on that'll get people to come talk to you.
You
I
know
thought about
what?
giving stuff.
I have a client. This is really funny. I just want to share it with you. So what she does is every morning when she leaves the house, she puts her name tag on upside down because inevitably someone somewhere is going to say, "Oh, hey, your name tag's upside down." And she goes, "Oh, thank you." And she turns it around because it always leads to a conversation around, "Oh, you're in real estate," or and that's just her thing that
Mhm.
she does. I asked her, I said, "Well, after you're done with that person, do you put it upside down again?" She says, "Nope. That's just her rhythm and routine for the day." She'll put it on upside down, and when someone tells her to turn it around, she does, and then she leaves it, right side up the rest of the day. But it's one of the ways that she keeps herself making sure that she's engaging
Yeah,
with people.
absolutely.
It's,
Yeah.
I think it's kinda clever. I don't know that I'd ever do it, but I definitely think it's clever and it works well for her.
I always thought about putting a vest on my dog, because he passed away a couple months ago, but I had a giant breed English Mastiff. And
Uh-huh.
I would take him in town. My God, I mean, no less than 30 or 40 people would stop to pet him. And I thought, if
Right,
I
right.
put a little vest on him that had real estate in it, and I would have business cards and swag to give away, how much business I leave on the concrete.
You left a lot. Yes. So I wanna go back kinda to the overriding theme that has shown up in your life. And that to me is you really have a fearlessness around change, moving where you really want to live. And I'm including you and your partner, your family. You guys decided, hey, everyone has moved away from Oregon. Let's go back to California. Then you're in California and huge life event happens that I'm sure caused both of you to reflect on your own lives and where you were living. And your partner's like, let's go to Hawaii. And you made it happen. So, and you got your real estate license in all 3 states and you relaunched your business 3 different times. You also have changed companies. You've been big, small, established, new, and you embrace technology. So I would say when I think about you in particular, you're an agent of change in my mind. You lean into change. You don't allow the fear around change to stop you or hold you back. If someone happens to be listening to us right now and they are afraid of change, or they feel as if they're stuck in Oklahoma City because it's where they grew up and it's where they're selling real estate, or they have a dream they're not following from that fear of change, what would you share with them?
I guess, it might sound flippant, but I would say jump in with both feet, make the change. You're not going to get any younger. I mean, we moved here. I thought about, I'm not getting any younger. If my family wants to see me, get on a freaking plane, for God's sake. It's
That's
Hawaii,
right.
but
That's right.
yeah, we didn't do a whole bunch of homework. We'd been here. We just thought about logistically what might make sense, financially what might make sense. It is harder in this business you we always talk about you got to have that sort of nest egg. You got to have money put away for the rainy day.
Correct.
Maybe the rainy
Yes.
day is your move. Maybe you want to move and you say, well, I can't move right now. Well, when can you move? I can put, so much money away and I can have 6 months or a year in reserves and I can get there in 8 months. Okay, fine. Put on your calendar. When I bought my first house, I had this piece of paper on the wall and it had dates on it because when we were trying to buy the house, we had to come up with our down payment. And I wrote in on this sheet, I had columns, and I had a column which had the date, and then every on that payday, we had to put so much money in. If we didn't, we had to figure out how to get it in there the next time. And so that we knew we had to have at the bottom. When we are going to close, this is how much money we got to have. And do the
Right.
same, put together, if you can't do it now, think about when can you do it. But if you don't ever do it, it's like people will say, you always think about, well, what if I had?
Yeah.
You'll have a regret that you didn't make it, that you didn't do it. So you just have to do it. And people are going to tell you it's going to either be too hard, or it'll be too expensive, it'll be too tough, it'll be too this, it'll be too that. You kind of have to ignore it. You have to try it, you
Right.
know.
And
And
I have
then like
news for them.
put yourself out there. Start
It's going to
talking to
be hard. They're going to have to work hard and they're going to face challenges even if they don't make the move.
right. Yeah, you're gonna have I mean, the
Like
economy is
life
gonna
is life.
do. People are worried about, "Well, the economy is not that good." Okay, well, is it gonna get better? And if it's gonna get better, why can't it get better where you're at? Why not do it now? That way you're poised to be successful when the economy starts ramping up. Instead of jumping
Brilliant
into it
advice.
when the economy is already doing good and you've got a bunch of agents that are already in it because everybody's making money. Because
Right.
when right now, when the market's harder, is when all the agents bail out of it.
Agreed.
Agents are moving right now
Agreed.
and agents are getting out of it. So, you can be a bigger fish and not so big pond if you're going to make that move, and do it. I would say, yeah, I think about why didn't I move here when I first thought about it? Because I think about opportunities that I missed out on.
Yeah.
One is part of it's being able to see Hawaii for what it was like um, in the 80s versus coming here in the 2000s or
Ugh.
after the Kilauea eruption,
I
when
just
I
had
think
a
about
total flashback to Magnum PI.
looking at the way
One
it
of
was,
my
I think
favorite
about,
shows and one of my
yeah,
favorite actors.
I'd watch it just
Sorry.
because it was Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've driven to and visited places, and I would think about, yeah, I remember when I first came out here in the 80s, and there was a town called Kalapana Gardens that we had visited. It no longer exists. It's completely gone. There's
It's
nothing there.
gone. Right. Right.
So I mean, there's some unpermitted structures and now they call upon vacation lots. But looking back and thinking about how that was then, I think about, God, what if I was living here back then? On top of the fact that real estate was so much cheaper back then.
Yeah, yes. And yet the universe has us where we are and we bloom where we're planted. However, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there forever. And if you feel that drive and compulsion, even in our industry, just remember the sales skills you learn in Oregon, you're going to carry those sales skills to California. So the brokerage and law and all of that will change, but learning how to communicate, connect, and work with people comes with you. And then you move
Right,
to Hawaii, it came with you, and you continue to grow and develop. So
right.
I want to thank you, Andy, for being our guest. I think your story is very inspirational. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you? I'm going to put all of your contact info in the description, but what's your
Text
favorite
or
method of
email,
someone?
really.
Text or
No,
email. That's awesome.
or
Okay.
email.
Good.
I'm on all,
Good.
I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook and TikTok.
Perfect.
Well, not so much on TikTok. I am, but I have a social media manager that helps
Well,
make
yeah. And that's why I asked your
stories
favorite
go
way.
out.
So email and
Email
text
and
is
text is the
best.
best.
And reach out if you are sitting there and you're feeling like, wow, I wish I could move to fill in the blank, wherever you might want to move to, and you feel as if you're stuck or you can't, reach out to me or reach out to Andy. I have a similar path of doing moves as well, but don't be afraid and make it happen. So
So,
thank you so much for being my guest. I hope you'll come back another time. I really enjoyed
love to,
discussing this with you.
love
And
to.
if you're listening, I hope you'll tune in for the next episode of The Inner Estate. Thank you for listening and have a great day.